Welcome to the Reality Revolution podcast. I am your host, Brian Scott, author, life coach, entrepreneur, inner space astronaut, epiphany addict, positive mind metaphysician, and artist. This podcast is dedicated to the spirits who believe life is meant to be magical and fun. It contains advanced viewpoints for the multidimensional human beings of the 21st century. Here, we venture to share mysteries of self and reality. Our primary purpose is to reawaken your sense of fascination and awe towards life, and to shatter your rigid belief systems and ways of seeing the world. Our goal is to hack reality, unleash your potential, and open unlimited possibilities of wealth, health, and relationships in your life to explore the very mysteries of the universe. Today's episode, we're going to talk about activating the pineal gland, or opening the third eye. So I think this is an important topic in relation to this podcast. I personally believe that if you work on activating your pineal gland, that you can access alternate dimensions, higher states of consciousness, and manifest dreams easier and have a better understanding of the world. It's a really remarkable thing when you focus on this, and that's why I'm talking about it. So just want to discuss a little bit about my own personal experience with the third eye or pineal gland and what it does, what it might not do, and we'll discuss it in this particular manner. And hopefully I can educate you from what I've learned, and we can figure out ways to open our third eye. Somebody emailed me the other day that had listened to the podcast and had said, how do you open up your third eye? And then I had another email randomly from a group I was on Facebook, and they said, how do I open up my third eye? And so I realized, this is an interesting topic for the podcast. I'm going to discuss and explore what I know about it and my own personal experiences. I think in a lot of ways there's myths and legends surrounding the third eye. It's discussed in yoga and literature. If you know anything about chakras, it's one of the main things when people discuss chakras, which are basically energy systems in your body related to different parts of your body. And these systems, I call them systems. They can be energy centers, whatever you want to call them. They both transmit and receive information on different vibrational levels. We go all the way from our sexual organs, through our stomach, into our solar plexus and heart, to the throat, to the third eye, and to the crown. Most of you that are listening to this already know this, and so I'm just covering that. And the third eye, we don't have to talk about it in terms of a chakra. I think that the word chakra carries a certain weight to it. When I mention it, I may lose a little bit of credibility. We don't necessarily have to talk about opening chakras. This is a very scientific thing. The pineal gland has a very powerful medium in the way it interfaces with our brain and the information that we receive. And once I discuss this more, you'll understand the importance of the pineal gland. It's not some woo-woo thing. It's very fascinating. The pineal gland is located at the center of the head behind the forehead, either at the eye level or slightly above, varying from person to person. We do hear it referred to as the third eye. I think that it's mentioned in literature, that's very popular in Hindu literature. In Sanskrit, it's referred to as ajna. The third eye, I believe, is referred to in the Christian Bible when Jesus says, if therefore your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light. And I believe he's referring to the third eye. And perhaps when I discuss the reality revolution, this revolution that we're going through, where we're manifesting our dreams and our thoughts faster than ever before, I think what's happening on a global scale is that our pineal glands are activating. So the pineal gland has been explained through conventional methods. To some degree, they have figured out what it does. They know, for instance, by looking at how when light strikes your retina, there is a nervous system of preganglion sympathetic neurons, and they move through, and the light transitions itself into your pineal gland. And when they go off, they signal your pineal gland, and then it secretes melatonin, which activates your brain's sleep mechanism. It is a critical part of the way that you go to sleep. When your body and your brain start secreting melatonin, then the pineal gland is the thing that is doing that. You know, I'm sure there are people out here that take melatonin. You know that it is an active ingredient that can aid in regulate your sleep cycle. The pineal gland is associated with sleep and deep states of meditation and slower brainwave states. Now, I don't think that's an accident. When people talk about opening the third eye, it's not going to happen when you're running around at the office. It's happening in deep, relaxed states that are near or close to sleep. Therefore, again, and also in the Bible, it says, the people which sat in the darkness saw great light. And the idea is when you turn off the light around you, the pineal gland actually picks up light from the inside. When light goes out, you activate the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland also secretes something called DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. It's popular in New Age circuit. You listen to Joe Rogan, you know about DMT. You know, they're taking potions of yopo and ayahuasca, and people are undergoing profound spiritual experiences. And what may be happening is this is a chemical way to open up the third eye on a significant scale. And when we discuss what happens to people that do this, that have experienced DMT, for instance, they experience profound time dilation, time travel. You access non-linear time. A great book by Strassman called DMT, the Spirit Molecule. I recommend it. It's discussing the history and the ways that DMT interacts spiritually with people and what it does. And that's why it's important. It's related to the pineal gland. It can take us on journeys to paranormal realms, and you can encounter transcendental and spiritual modalities. So when they look at the pineal gland, the interesting thing is that it's filled with water. And this water that's in the pineal gland can calcify. So as we age, it calcifies. And that's why our mentalities can change over time. We're not open or aware to access what we're accessing through the pineal gland. It can also calcify, as I'll discuss later, through your diet, through fluoride and chemicals. The environment can be toxic, refined sugars and flours. At least from the literature that I've read, those are things they can trace to possible calcification of the pineal gland. Now, the interior of the pineal gland, this is where it gets fascinating. And when people call it the third eye, it's not a joke. It has pinealocytes, which are exactly like rods and cones in the retina of the eye. So we're talking about hardcore mainstream science showing that within the pineal gland, there are something that's similar to rods and cones. It's picking up light and transducing light. Why is it doing this? This gland also has tiny little crystals, which have something called piezoelectric properties. So there's energy that comes from these crystals that activate inside of your brain. Obviously, something's happening inside of your brain. They have something called Piezo Luminescence. When compressed, these crystals in your brain, inside the pineal gland, release photons of light. They're piezochromatic crystals, and they release light. So you have crystals located in the pineal gland of your brain that can release light. One article I found gave a very good explanation of this by Buccaneer and Sees in The New Crystal in the Pineal Gland, Characterization of Potential Role in Electromechanotransduction, stated, a new form of biomineralization has been studied in the human pineal gland, and it consists of small crystals that are less than 20 microns in length. These crystals are responsible for electromechanical biological transduction mechanism in the pineal gland due to the structured and piezoelectric properties. So what we know is, what is going on with this fascinating gland that has the ability to see with rods and cones, and it transduces light? The pineal gland is wired into the cortex of the brain just like the eye. So when we see visions inside of our mind, many times we may be getting these glimpses and visions from your pineal gland. So it appears that, as I said, they're in the water. Now, according to research cited in Source Field Investigations by David Wilcock, darkness is appearing to activate electromagnetic activity in the pineal gland. So they found, by doing research studies, when people wore masks, they could study the pineal gland, and they found that it would actually create electromagnetic energy inside the pineal gland. Very, very fascinating, I think, personally. And so if you've ever felt like a buzzing sensation or tone in your head, some cases they say that's what's happening, is that your pineal gland is being activated or is actually transducing information that is coming in. So I just want you to think about this for a second. Right now, wherever you're at, if you're in your car or sitting in bed listening to this podcast, there's radio waves coming right through your brain. There's Wi-Fi signals. There's all kinds of TV signals and information that's bleeding through your brain, right? The reason why the pineal gland is so important, when it's activated, it's blocking out all of those other signals. And so it allows the source field, the alternate space, to bleed through. And we're going to discuss the source field in great depth in another episode. But just to give you a basic summary, as I've discussed in other podcasts, science is starting to discover there is a source field, a unified field, that creates space, time, matter, and biology. And we've discussed it with zero-point energy. There is something that Laszlo calls it the Akashic Field or the A Field, in the quantum vacuum that contains all knowledge of all probability. In Vadim Zeland's reality transurfing, he refers to this as the alternate space. It's everywhere and nowhere that we can access. This is information. Whatever action that you take, this particular field knows all of the consequences all the way to your death and to what would happen and beyond. All the way back and forth. In this dimension, time is not linear. In this dimension, all different probabilities are available in information space, as an information space. And so when people say, I have an intuition, or I'm psychic, or I had a glimpse of something, what's happening is you're accessing this source field. That is my strong belief of what's happening. And so water appears to be the key. The water floating in the pineal gland becomes a direct conduit to time, space, and other realities. This may be overwhelming, but if you understand the mind is non-local, the memories and the things we have in our mind, it's not inside your brain. It's non-local. The consciousness that you have, you access it through your brain, but it's outside of your brain. This has been proven in multiple studies. We can have an entire episode of the podcast later to confirm this. But just imagine for a second, just accept this idea that your memories and your brain are not contained within your brain. The memories that you've had, the thoughts that you have, are outside of your brain. They're non-local. So this information is easy to access. Imagine being able to access all the information ever for anything ever. Okay? And it's easy to understand. This information is alive and active. And sometimes our subconscious, because of its incredible processing power, can access its information. And it's going to know a lot more than we may on a conscious level. And another thing, I personally believe that this source field is intelligent. So this cosmic memory field guides us, and it helps us, and it empowers us. We're using it all the time. We're accessing it in states of sleep and in states of trance, in certain alpha states. But by activating the pineal gland, we're giving an actual space for this information to come directly into our brains, with filtering out all of the other signals that are coming in. And that's the incredible power of activating the pineal gland and why it's so important. Now, my personal belief is that the pineal gland is the key to our next evolutionary state and whatever is going on in this reality revolution. It is supposed to be used to give us trans-dimensional access. That this very gland, this tiny little gland in our brains, gives us access to many dimensions. Now, I've had incredible experiences related to the pineal gland that indicate there are alternate dimensions and parallel timelines. I don't know if anybody of you heard the first episode, but in my first episode, I talked about this incredible event where I had some people try to rob me in my house, a home invasion. And something crazy happened. And long story short, the next day, it felt like I had entered into a parallel reality. But the interesting thing is, before this had happened, I had been into deep meditation, experimenting with deep levels of meditation, actually trying to open my third eye. That was one of my goals. And I had this incredible experience when I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation on activating the pineal gland. I highly recommend you listen to it. And then some other meditations that I had tried, and I had gotten a mentor that gave me some advice on how to open my pineal gland. And I'll discuss some of the exercises that I was doing at that time. But in one deep state of meditation, I had an experience where I was told to enter into this crystal chamber in my pineal gland as if it was a space, a room. And then I started to meet other versions of myself inside the space. I started to meet versions of myself that are all different sizes, different shapes, from all different timelines. And they had information for me, information that was uniquely related to my life. Some of it I didn't have direct access to. It was a massive amount of download of information that I got. It was like I was talking to millions of people and they were giving me this information. And of course, I'm just imagining this, and I'd love to write this as a story. I don't think it's real. My mind is just taking me on a very wondrous trip, and I found it very fascinating. But one of the key things about this is I was being told that I was going to have a significant event that was going to change my life. And so I was kind of aware something's going to happen. So, when the bullet bounced off my back that night, and then I woke up and I felt like I had entered into some kind of parallel dimension where things were different. People were different. My kids were different. Everything was different. I believe that part of this was an awareness that I had come from my pineal gland. Accessing this information, I knew the things that I had to do from all the possibilities of what I could do to survive this event. I don't know if that's true, but this is part of my research, and my discussion with you is elaborating on what had happened to me and what may have happened in your experiences. We can share this and I can come to some kind of conclusion, because all I'm doing is just trying to figure this out. We hear legends of the pineal gland. It's worldwide, that it gives a gift of both seeing inner and outer essence of what we are. And as I mentioned, it goes all the way back to Sanskrit. It's called the ajna, which means to perceive and to command. So we can take in images, and more importantly, we can create them as well. And when we create images, we're creating them from the pineal gland. I believe when we hold images in our mind, then they materialize through trans-dimensional adaptations of this gland. At least that is part of the process. Obviously, there is much more going on. We're accessing energies and states and spiritual beings and the divine itself. And for you that believe it's just the universe, that's fine. Or if it's God, whatever you believe, I'm saying that something special and powerful is happening in this process. And I believe it's related on some level to the pineal gland. When we open our eyes to see, it's an amazing thing. But when we open our third eye to see, we become aware, and so many things can happen. In spiritual literature, they call it the seat of the soul. Another great book to read, The Seat of the Soul. And I think that's a good definition of it. The soul, I think, is the multidimensional being that's experiencing all of these different existences. And I think that in this particular existence, we have access to this information that's coming in through, perhaps, the pineal gland. Clearly, it is acting like a light meter for the body, translating variations in light to hormonal messages related to the body through autonomic nervous system. So let's consider what light is, because we keep on seeing a reference to light for the third eye and the pineal gland. Visible light consists of wave packets called photons, which consist of wave or particle-like properties depending on the way it's observed, as I discussed with the double-slit experiment. Light is the fastest of all things. It's the speed of light. It carries electromagnetic energy. So when we use the pineal gland to access deeper fields of source, all space, cosmic memory, Akashic Field, all of these things, the brain is activated by a greater energy that brings with information in the forms of thoughts or imagery. And when we're in deep states of meditation and we have thoughts that come to us, we may be getting these thoughts from this field. And as I said, I had studied and labored for years to activate my pineal gland. And I began to think that it was a joke, that it was a scam, that people were saying this, and I kind of given up. I knew that something was going on. I, of course, had several psychedelic experiences earlier in my life that told me that this state was possible. But these states were only temporary, brief glimpses into the divine, into the power of my mind, into some other dimension that was going on. One of the interesting things from the study I quoted earlier is that the pineal gland is a neuroendocrine transducer, and I think the word transducer is key. So let's understand what a transducer is. Something that receives a signal in one form of energy and converts it into another. Wi-Fi signals, radio signals, TV signals all around you right now, with the right instruments, can be transduced into another form of information. As Dr. Joe Dispenza says in his recent book, Becoming Supernatural, when the pineal gland acts as a transducer, it can pick up frequencies above our three-dimensional space-time sensory-based reality. Once the pineal gland is activated, it can tune into higher dimensions of space and time. So the New Age material out there that you read will state the third eye governs the center of wisdom, intuition, psychic abilities, and clairvoyance. And it may be because we're accessing this field of information. One thing we know is when your pineal gland is activated, it produces melatonin, which induces rapid eye movements. And I'll discuss that later. I think that's important to understand because the rapid eye movements is part of this process in the dream states that we're in. So first of all, let's talk about the signs that your pineal gland may have been activated. You may feel a pressure between your eyebrows, a pulsing sensation. That's common. That's when I started to notice something. You start to change the food that you eat. You become more aware. Food is vibration. And I think that the pineal gland, when it's activated, becomes more aware of vibration. Water that you drink and the foods that you eat, you become more aware and sensitive to certain toxicities. And food that you might have loved before suddenly just becomes not as good. Heightened perceptions, increased foresights and intuitions. You become more aware of the energies around you. You start noticing synchronicities, signs that you are connected. And these synchronicities, I believe, when you start becoming aware, it's a sign that perhaps your pineal gland's been activated, among other things. You become aware of numbers, common numbers, where people see 1111 or 444 or 555. A lot of times I think that's because you're seeing these synchronicities. Your mind is open to connections around you. Another thing I've noticed when I've coached people and they've said that their third eye has been open, and when I had my own third eye, your thoughts patterns start changing. You have new perspectives. Relationships start to feel different. The way you think about things change. What was super important to you before, when you begin to receive this information, it just becomes not as important. And what you may have been passionate about just becomes unimportant. Some things kind of go away. You become more sensitive to light. Colors seem to go differently. You know, it's weird. In my childhood, I was told that I was colorblind. And as I become more sensitive and I believe opening my third eye, I believe that I'm able to see different colors. Some kind of adaptation has occurred. And I don't believe that I am colorblind as I was. I don't know. There's definitely been a shift in the color that I can see. There are higher states of conscience that occur with it, greater intuition, psychic events. I remember that I had an event. I was parked at a convenience store. And I looked around and I knew that the people in the car next to me and the people standing in the front were about to rob the store. I don't know why, but I just got in my car and left. And the next day when I read the paper, I read that that convenience store had been robbed. I don't know if it was from those people, but it felt like I could read their minds. I knew that they had these images in their mind and they were about to happen. Maybe that's just a natural part of becoming aware or whatever. But that is something that I noticed. You start to have these things. And you have this greater feeling of being part of the whole. Your ego goes away and you're part of the whole. So let's talk about the different ways to open the third eye. The first of all is it may not be easy. Everybody wants a quick fix. In the culture that we're in, everybody wants an automatic quick fix to open the third eye. There's some ways to hack this and make this go faster, but in a lot of cases, it's a spiritual journey. And I think the number one thing is committing to it will give you a greater power and ability to open up your third eye. I think enhancing the imagination. If the pineal gland is active in creating visualization, enhancing imagination works. When I started creating artwork, drawing pictures, doing artistic things, I think that it turns the gland from just a receiver of information to a creator of information. And nobody needs to see the art. Just going through a process of doing some kind of art, I think, will get you along the path. You may be around electromagnetics that are limiting you. So also to go out in nature more, be free from different signals and give yourself a little awareness of that. One thing my mentor taught me to do that I think was powerful was to go out in the sunlight, to close my eyes and stare at the sun with my eyes closed, not open, and try to see if I could see the light coming in my forehead, not my eyes. And sometimes I would cover my eyes and then see if I could sense the light coming in from my forehead. And I started to notice a greater sensitivity to sunlight by doing that. There are binaural beats that you can listen to that vibrate your mind, and I think they access certain states. You see them advertised on YouTube that I recommend. They may activate and vibrate the pineal gland in a certain way that decalcifies, detoxifies the pineal gland. The number one thing that I think that helped me in my transition was the eye movement exercise. Now, I've built this into some of my meditations that you've heard on this podcast. It's related to neurolinguistic programming because we know, as I mentioned earlier, that it induces rapid eye movement. What I believe is happening is if you do this particular process, you can access all the different levels of your brain that you access with your eyes. Your eyes are like joysticks to the soul. And so imagine if you had a joystick and you wanted to set a certain code to unlock something in a game. Imagine it just like that. So try this exercise. Understand that there's one part of your brain that's creative and one part of that's informational, that's a memory. So we access memories from the past, or we create in the future. The FBI uses this knowledge to tell if somebody's lying by the way they move their eyes. They can see if they're moving their eyes in one direction or another. We want to cover all of those different areas. We want to cover our memories, and we want to cover the left and right brain. And so a particular eye movements that I've tried is, look up into your left for 15 seconds. Go back to the middle. Then look down into your left for 15 seconds. Go back into the middle. Then look down into your right. And then go look back into the middle. Look up into the right for 15 seconds. For each of these, do 15 seconds. Then look back in the middle. Then look straight down, which accesses your sense of smell. Then look up, straight up. And then look directly to your right at your ear on the auditory level, and then look to your left. And just doing this pattern, it creates a neural pattern, kind of opens up gateways in your mind. I've found that it opens up neural patterns in your brain. That is my belief. And that by doing this, it does have some effect in helping to activate the pineal gland. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a wonderful technique in his book, Becoming Supernatural. It's similar to the Kundalini that's talked about in yoga. It's a breathing technique where you breathe and you try to pull the energy up into your brain. Where you focus your energy is where it goes. You know how in yoga they'll tell you, breathe into your stomach, and then you're breathing energy into your stomach. Well, we want to breathe into our head, particularly into the pineal gland. And we want to suck the energy that we have in our bodies. And so he literally has you tighten your muscles all the way up from your sphincter through your stomach, through your upper abdomen, lower abdomen, all the way through the chest, pulling the energy up into the head, breathing it up, sucking it like a straw, and holding it there and squeezing the pineal gland. And, this is probably one of the most powerful techniques. And I think there is some science to it. As I continue to do it, I think that's one of the most powerful techniques. Now, there probably is some other ways that you can use essential oils or crystals, and those are outside of my wheelhouse. I don't have the expertise on those. I would love to hear your comments and recommendation about essential oils or crystals. If you've had your pineal gland activated, I want to know about your experiences and how you've had your pineal gland activated. Psychedelics can work, but just remember that this is going to be a temporary experience. And what we want to do is make this a part of our everyday lives, not something that can literally change our body chemistry and other things like that. Psychedelics have a place. You want to do it with guidance, with people that are aware of it. There's some dangers involved with it. And to avoid those dangers, opening the pineal gland naturally might be better. Fasting can work. Cleansing out your body of toxins may help release things that are blocking your pineal gland, particularly fluoride. Some people say there's some kind of conspiracy that they're trying to take away our third eye. I don't think that's what's happening. I think fluoride just is good for the teeth. And as a result, there's some connection between fluoride and the third eye, and that it may be locking or it may be blocking our pineal gland from activating. It's hard, I've tried to go off of toothpaste without fluoride, but there's not very many good ones. But there are some good ones out there, and that might be another thing that works. But I would love to get your feedback. This is something that is ongoing in learning. I think that this reality revolution, clearly something is happening. And maybe, just maybe, it's related to the opening of our third eye, our pineal gland, on a large global scale. And maybe we want to harness this and control this and understand what's happening instead of let it just happening accidentally. So I would love to hear your stories about your third eye being activated. You can email me at brian@advancedsuccessinstitute.com. I'll read every email that you send. Please contact me if you have any questions. We'll be having some guided meditations soon and some additional new material we'll be talking about. I can't wait for these future episodes. Thank you so much. I am so grateful that you've spent the time listening to me and sharing this time with me. I just cannot tell you how much it means to me. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining the Reality Revolution. Reality Revolution. Reality Revolution. Reality Revolution.